How do you buy a boat that you really want on a very low budget? The boat that I had before this one was a 4,000 euro boat, and it was all right. Then I upgraded it and I sold it for a lot more money than I bought it for. But how to how to find and how to buy a really cheap boat? It is very time consuming. And when you are finally in the buying process, you need to be able to risk and act fast. What I always do is to start out really with kind of with a piece of paper and then determining what are my priorities, size, material, um, what kind of steering system do I want. And for the boat before this, I wanted a metal boat, and I didn't have a very big budget, so I knew that I couldn't buy an aluminium boat, but a steel boat. So I was sort of narrowing it down into saying I want a steel boat. Then I wanted something above 30 feet because I have three children. They were little at the time, but still we were four people who were supposed to be able to sail on longer trips on this boat. Then I also wanted wheel steering, not tiller steering, wheel steering, and I wanted it to be with enough height inside that I could stand up because my first boat didn't have that. And that was great. And I sailed really long distances all the way to Norway in my 26 feet international folks boat. But I also learned that in the other boats that I have purchased, I wanted to be able to stand up inside. So these were my criteria for the boat: steel boats, wheel steering. I wanted an inboard engine, not an outboard engine, because they always seem to fail when they need them the most. Inboard engine, enough height that I could stand up, and also that it should be, in so good condition that I could actually sail in it before I started to invest any more money. So those were my priorities. Then I was on a very, very narrow budget. We were at that time living in our horse farm in the countryside with the horses. And with three small children, I also knew it's going to be a limited amount of time that I can spend sailing and also maintaining the boat. So I wanted a cheap boat so that I wouldn't feel guilty or in any way stressed out by having, millions and millions lying there idle without being used. I didn't want an in sort of a total project boat because I know that it's going to be expensive. Whatever you do in a boat, it always costs money. There's no way around it. With my budget, I knew that it would be a boat that would demand a lot of work. I was also at a point in my life where it's a good idea to provoke my brain into new learning experiences. And buying a steel boat that does need a lot of maintenance, I sort of really wanted that because I wanted to learn the skills. And I think the only thing I can't do with steel after renovating that boat is welding, but I would be able to learn that as well, I guess. So I narrowed it down to these criteria, and then I started looking. Denmark is a very expensive place to buy anything. So what I normally do is that I look outside of Denmark. And in this period of time, I knew that I couldn't buy a boat in the States because I wouldn't have the time to go there and then sail it back and deal with all the administration bureaucracy with that. So I needed to find, or I wanted to find a boat within Europe because it's the same kind of tax system and VAT system. I could also buy a boat in Sweden. Norway, I would be able to buy a boat, but there I would also have to deal with extra expenses due to a different VAT. So I experimented and looked at all the websites that I could find that were selling boats in Europe. And because I was looking for a budget boat, I very fast discovered that looking at the very big expensive brokers, it's a waste of time because they don't have these kind of bargains that I was looking for. So something like in Denmark, we have something called DBA, the blue newspaper, where people advertise privately, and normally it's low cost items you can buy there, including boats. In Sweden, there's and the equivalent is called Blocket, and there you can also find good cheap boats. In Germany, and that's where I found the boat that I ended up buying, eBay Kleinanzeigen, sort of a small advertisement or low cost advertisement, eBay Kleinanzeigen, and that's free to use. And also looking at other websites in Europe and figuring out which brokers do have this type of boat. And in that process, and that can be a year, it can be a month, depending on how much time you invest. I was looking at different boats and I discovered a boat type that I did not know, a V-boat. It's a German construction metal boat with the same kind of shape that the boat I have now, which is a boat that I like. And I started looking for the V-boats, and you can you can buy them in Germany, former Eastern Germany, and typically also in Holland. Um, and then I had sort of had it narrowed down which kind of boat type I wanted, and they are also very reasonable in price. Some of them are in very, very bad conditions, but at least I now had figured out what kind of boat I'm going for. And I was looking at three different boats, including the one that I ended up buying. The first one was in Germany, so I did invest in driving to Germany, sailing to Germany, and serving this boat, which I really wanted. And in that period, my father died, so I had to let that boat go. Then I found another one in Berlin, the same type, slightly more expensive, in a better shape. And as I was transferring the deposit, I was sitting on Fuerteventura, and the deposit didn't go through. And when I got back, the guy that I wanted to buy it from, he had sold it to one who offered him cash on the pier, which is very understandable. Which is also what you need to prepare for mentally, that you think, wow, I have now found my boat, located it, arranged to buy it, and if you're not fast enough, it might be gone. So the third one, and when I sort of have located what kind of boat I want, it really becomes a waiting game and almost sort of like investing in stocks that uh, uh, when I'm really ready to buy, I in periods I really on a daily basis I'm looking at these websites that I have located or making a general search on the global websites to see if any hits comes up on the specific boat type that I want. And with this 4,000 euro boat. I was sitting, it was, I think it was 10 o'clock at night on the eBay Kleinanzeigen, and I had probably been into that 20 times during that day. And then, sort of just before going to bed, I was doing it one more time. And there, this Vibo was advertised for 4,000 euros. And I instantly clicked the buy button. It was very honestly advertised as needing improvement, needing upgrades, in healthy conditions, and the owner, he wanted to get rid of it fast, therefore the low price. It was red, so I sort of anticipated that it would be very faded and in horrible condition. This red hull, what can you expect of a 4,000 euro boat? Next day, I called the seller, and I was number two on the list. Another one had been before me, even though I almost hit the button at the same time when it was, uploaded. But again, when you're on a budget and you're really hunting for the bargain boat, you need to be extremely fast because the others out there are also hunting for that bargain. And once we sort of prioritize what we need, you also know that you need to be fast to be the first. And I was sort of saying to this seller that if for some reason that first buyer doesn't pick up the boat, then I will buy it. And he was very honest and said, but I want you to come and have a look at it before you say yes. But he was also honest and said, but there's somebody else who has already bought the boat. And I kept calling this man every third day, I think. And after I think a week, the first buyer had not sort of transferred the money, and the owner couldn't get hold of him. So he said, "Okay, if you want the boat, we can arrange that you come and have a look at it." And I told him I want to buy it without having seen it, but he was very fair and said, "No, I'll not close a deal on those terms. So you need to come and see it." So I packed my children and once again drove to this Greifswald in the former East Germany, and I think it was November. It was snowy, it was gray, the worst possible conditions to actually survey a boat because, in the summertime with blue water and everybody's having a ball and a barbecue, it's very easy to convince yourself that this is the kind of life and this is the kind of boat you want. But I was, surveying on land, on the hard, in the most dreadful, depressing conditions, and also preparing myself that a boat for 4,000 euro is going to be in a horrible, horrible condition. But then again, if I don't have any more money to spend, that's just the deal, and then I'll have to improve and upgrade whatever has to be renovated to make it seaworthy. We arrived, and it was on the hard, on the top, and immediately I could see that the hull was, spotless, in extremely good condition. The same for the keel and under the waterline. And it turned out that the owner 4 years previously had sailed to Bornholm, and before that he had had the hull sanded and professionally repainted, and the same with the under the waterline with the keel. So it was in brilliant condition. And of course, it was old, outdated, and being a budget boat in former Eastern Germany, it was also very obvious that everything on it had been maintained carefully with very low investment, probably because they didn't have any money. And after that, I told the owner that I want to buy this boat. So I went back, got a contract, and transferred the money. I think probably two-thirds of the money, and then the last, but it was so little, and that was kind of it. I got all the paperwork done, and then in probably in April we were going down to pick up this boat, and I was, it's just thinking about it now. Sometimes I've, been really risk willing and just saying go for it and then hoping that things will turn out. And again, with this boat, I hadn't even organized with the owner if he was going to put on the mast, if he was going to, put it in the water, if he was going to put on the sails. And I was just driving down there with my children and, with my navigation equipment so that I could sail it back to Denmark, and not really knowing what to expect. Sometimes you're just lucky and the people you're dealing with are really, really decent. I didn't know. And again, what can you anticipate for 4,000 euro? It's so little money. It's impossible even to believe that you can buy a seaworthy boat for that amount of money. And we arrived, and Domus was in the water, looking absolutely fabulous. The sails were on, and it was actually ready to go. 4,000 euros. I bought a seaworthy boat. There were in reality no really sort of hidden issues. Everything about this boat, the owner had been very honest, and also as it was on the hard, I could see that it had had some welding done around the keel, the places where these V boats normally used to have sort of weaknesses. Um, some of the railing were totally rusted, and all of it was out in the open. So there were no sort of nasty surprises. The engine was working. It was a Buk 20. I started it, and we sailed off, which of course is, again, thinking back, I'm not sure I would have done that today, but I've done that with two boats, buying them and just taking off out in the oceans. And thankfully, both times it's turned out well, and we were safe. With this boat, I was sailing with my three children in a 4,000 euro boat, and going out into rather big swells, and sort of deep down crossing my fingers that the engine would not let us down, and it never ever did. The only thing that did cost extraordinary amount of money, apart from what I chose to renovate, upgrade, redesign. It would have been seaworthy without, but there was a long list of things I wanted to do. I just can't help it. If it's my kolonihave or a boat, I just must improve it. It's this creative gene that most of us have when we buy project boats. The propeller shaft turned out to be worn out, so that some water was coming in, which was kind of surprising actually, because as he was sailing to Bornholm, he had had the propeller shaft exchanged, and I got the invoices from him for this exchange. So I don't know what the deal is or was there, but at least I got it exchanged with a stainless steel propeller shaft, so that the man who bought the boat for me, he will have that for the rest of his life. To sum it up, it is really possible to find a seaworthy boat that fulfills your realistic criteria for very little money. It does take really a massive amount of time, and it can be very stressful and also slightly demotivating and depressing in periods, because once you have sort of figured out what you're looking for, and also, again and again are confronted with that you don't have any more money to buy, the boat that you would also like, who have all the features that you dream about, and then going back and forth, and then again ending up with what is your realistic amount that you can buy for instantly, not lending money, but really in your hand, so you can really push that buy button once the bargain boat is there, and it will come eventually. Of all the four boats that I have bought, every single time I've been going through this process of narrowing down what do I want, down to the specific boat type, uh, the most high items on the priority list, and then really just hunting, looking, searching, sometimes 10, 12 hours a day. Keep looking, and when the bargain is there, you just have to be ready to buy if you really are going for this kind of really really good deal. So it's very time consuming, and it can be sort of a psychological roller coaster. And eventually, if you keep at it, you will find that bargain. You might not, succeed the first time or the second time, but then maybe the third time or the fifth time. And there'll always be another boat that fulfills your criteria. Somehow the human brain believes that, when you find that one boat, it's as if you can't survive if you don't get it. But that's not true. In my case, with the boat for the 4,000 euro, it was my third buying attempt, and I ended up with a really really great boat for, I think, a third of the price for the other Weebos that I really believed were the only ones at that point in time. And also, I invested a lot of hours in my 4,000 euro boat. I didn't have to. It was seaworthy without, but I wanted to. So the first step to buy a boat with very little money is to invest the time of finding out realistically what is your budget, what can you put on the table in 2 minutes time, and then really invest the time to look everywhere where you could realistically sail your boat from or back to your hometown from. And once the bargain is there, you just have to push that buy button instantly, because you are not alone. There's a lot of us out there hunting for that really special bargain. With the boat that I have now, I went through the exact same process of, having the dream of what I wanted, and that would have been a Skip Novak and Arctic expedition boat, preferably custom built by the KM Wharf in Macomb, where I picked up this boat. But I cannot afford that kind of boat. So I spent, again, hours and hours, days after days, week after week, several months, sort of narrowing down that this time around it was not a Vibo, it was a Reinke that I wanted. Uh, the three metal boats I've had, the first one, the Vanderstad, and then the Vibo, and then the Reinke, are all the same shape with this Kneckspat. So I have a very specific shape that apparently appeals to me, because they have all been looking more or less the same in the construction. Out of my four boats, I have bought two cheap boats, and I haven't had a surveyor on any of the cheap boats, because the survey for a Vibo, the 4,000 euro boat, would have been 2,000 euros on top of that. So it was just not worth it. There, I kind of trusted my own judgment, and just, the risk of buying something. And if everything was really shitty, then I had not lost that much money. The two times that I have bought expensive boats, or for me expensive boats, the first Ella boat, 34 feet Vanderstad, and also this Reinke. The first time I brought one of my friends, who's an aluminium, very famous boat builder, the Öland brothers. I flew him down to Holland, where he was the surveyor. And this boat, I paid a professional surveyor to survey the boat, so that I at least had some kind of an idea that the aluminium, electricity, etc., was okay. And if you want to insure your boat, and it's not a budget boat, you also need a kind of fresh survey for your insurance company to be able to give you a price for the insurance. To me, sailing is a lot of work, risk, self battle to overcome your anxieties and your doubts. And I bought my first boat after having crossed the Atlantic, and after having sailed 3 months, including crossing the Biscay. So I didn't start out buying a boat. But when I bought my first boat, even having some sailing experience and long distance experience, I decided to buy this International Folks boat, a small, cheap boat that I knew very well, a very seaworthy boat, and I sailed all the way to Norway in it single handed. And I wanted a boat where I could make all the mistakes without that it would cost a fortune to repair whatever damages I I uh, I encountered. And also, a small boat is easier to handle. You will get into too much wind, too many waves. You will have an engine inboard, outboard that won't start at the times where you need it the most. And a small boat, even in higher winds, is much more easy to handle. It's still a handful, but it's a lot more easy to handle than the boat size that I have now, 12 tons, almost 40 feet, which I also do share in these videos. This that it takes a lot more for me now to get ready to sail this boat, because it is heavy and it is big, and the sail areas, once the wind starts really getting up there, it's a total different ball game, which I do respect. So I can only recommend, when you're starting out, first of all, go sailing as much as possible before you buy a boat, so that you do have an idea about if it's something for you. I have a very good friend of mine, and she started sailing with me actually in the Swedish archipelago with the children, and fell in love with it. And then she started on a sailing school, and then she bought a small 24-foot boat. Um, and the first season she did sail. Then she got into, even in Denmark, sort of pretty rough weather. And if you are starting out, rough weather is very scary, and you must have a lot of respect for it, because nature is dangerous. The ocean can kill you. And I think she encountered more, or on in one season, a few of these high wind incidents that really scared her. And I'm not really aware of how aware she is about that she got scared. But at least the consequence is that now, for 2 full seasons, this boat has just been lying in the water in the harbor, and she hasn't been sailing once. I'm only utilizing that as an example of, um, go sailing. Don't, watch the YouTube videos from the Pacific, and then believe that it's all blue water and drinks with your friends. That's, a tiny part of it. So this really, going sailing, and maybe even renting a smaller boat, to find out if it's really something you want, with everything that comes with it, the risk and the maintenance and uh, the stresses of handling everything, because it is a big responsibility. I have been, on and off boats, as this is my number four, and I haven't sort of, sold one to buy another. I did this with this one, and I know now, with all my life experiences, that I really, really want to spend as many years now going sailing, because at some point I'll probably get too weak to handle at least a boat this size. Uh, Whoever knows what's going to happen in life. But the realistic prospect is that my window of opportunity of going sailing on a big boat is closing. It's closing. So I really do know that I want to go sailing, including everything that it takes, and also being aware that, at least in the beginning, I'll not take this boat out in really rough weather until I have the confidence, by taking it step by step, sailing and sailing and sailing as much as possible, to gain the confidence that I can handle it as much as you can ever handle a boat in high winds. Uh, so I really recommend to sail before you buy a boat, to figure out whether you really want it. Thank you so much for watching. And if you're still with me, of course, I would love you to subscribe and donate. And hopefully, you can gain some insights to make your own decisions about what you want to do with your life, by me being honest about sharing my experiences, and also some of the life events that has brought me to the situation where I am living on board Seawind today, and how I'm managing and coping in spite of reality.